We all value local news and we want to know what's going on in our community. But what if we don't think we're getting the full story or even the truth from our traditional local media? Well, what can you do about it, and what are the alternatives? Thank you for watching. My name's Glen Morgan, and this is We the Governed. And I want to just talk about this. This is one of those subjects that I really care about a lot because I think local news is very important. And many of us, oftentimes, we feel very detached sometimes from the news we're getting from overseas or from the other side of the country. And I'm reporting from Washington State, so oftentimes it gets very parochial. You want to know what's going on in your local community. What's happening in my city, in my county, in my local town. If I live in Seattle, what's happening in the big city, or since we're in the middle of the legislative session right now, what's happening in Olympia to take away our freedom and rights. And we oftentimes wonder, are we getting the full story, or are we even getting an accurate story? And of course, everybody is aware that basically the way we consume news has changed a lot. It's really not so often the people looking at the newspaper at the kitchen table like I remember doing with my grandfather, or even when I was younger before the internet, when I was in college, and I'd always get that paper and read it. The reality is it's quite a bit different today. Most people are getting the news and usually little bites and sometimes just headline level stuff, but they're surfing it on their phone, they're surfing it on the computer at home, they're getting it very differently. Very few people are buying the newspaper, and an increasingly smaller audience is even looking at it on television. So they're getting the news in different ways. But there still ends up being just a limited number of providers of primary news sources, and especially at a local level. But oftentimes everybody's upset, or frequently upset, that they don't think they're getting the full story. Are they getting fake news? Are they getting news that's been distorted or manipulated, or just what the political elite have kind of fed to lazy reporters at news stations? This is really a problem. There's been a lot of stories about how this groupthink in media is distorting the truth. We're not really getting the information in the way that we want it. And this, also matters to me a lot. I used to be actually a paper boy, delivering newspapers door to door for the Seattle Times when I was younger. So if you lived somewhere between Military Road and Reith Road, I probably delivered papers. I was a paper boy delivery guy. I had a couple routes up there and did it for about 4 years. And sorry for delivering propaganda to your front door, but it's probably gotten a lot worse since I was doing that in the mid-'80s, and now we're in a situation in which a large percentage of people are really concerned that the truth isn't getting to them, that the news, such as it's being reported, is being manipulated. This is a very common issue. And the thing that I oftentimes have said as an activist and as somebody who's gone out and started doing my own reporting on what's going on in our communities is that we have to stop complaining about the fact that we're not getting the truth, or thinking that we can somehow convince people who are willing to provide misinformation to us or ignore stories that we care about, thinking that they're going to suddenly change the colors. The reality is they're just going to keep doing the same thing that they've always been doing. So what we have to start doing is reporting our own, what's going on in our community. And that's possible. That's something you can do. It's very hard for somebody that lives like I do down in South Thurston County to know what's going on in Washington, D.C. for sure, but I can get up to Olympia and see what's going on in the state legislature, and I can go to Thurston County and find out what's happening in the commission, and I can go to my school board and find out what's happening there. And no matter what, I can definitely do better, as you can, than what's being reported currently. Now, part of this is because these guys don't have much of a budget anymore, and most of the traditional media is collapsing and financially failing. But the few that are left are not necessarily doing a good job, and I think we can do better, or at least augment it and get better information out to our community than what we have right now. So I want to talk to a couple of specifics and give you some specific examples because I think they're relatively doable when you see that other people are doing this right now, not far away from where you live. Specifically, I'll talk about the Port Townsend Free Press, which is out on the Olympic Peninsula, started by Jim Scarantino. I've done some articles about them, and I've referenced them before. And you can see it's just a basic website, but it reports mostly on local issues in their community that are constantly being ignored by the traditional media. And Jim's done a great job just exposing lots of of these stories, especially about the homeless industrial complex, backgrounds on county commissioners, grants that are being manipulated and lost or stolen, or and basically a lot of little corruption stories. And it's important to report on that because you can't expect government to change when they don't think anybody's watching. It's very important for us to have honest and accurate free press kind of information. The Port Townsend Free Press does a great job. It's a good example of what one person can do when they're particularly dedicated. And of course, he has a few other people writing for him now. When one person does a good job, more people want to join with you, and pretty soon it becomes a bigger enterprise. Even if it's just run online with a very low cost, low overhead costs, you can really get into the weeds, do those records requests, get information, and start reporting on stories that are going to have a big impact for you and your community and what's happening down the street and in your neighborhood. Another example, and I'm kind of excited to talk about this, is another new one that just popped up, is the Skagit Free Press. And again, this is up in Northwest Washington. Skagit County is right between Whatcom and Snohomish, and they just launched recently. And again, I'll link to these new websites down below in the video description so you can go look at them yourself. And I've noticed that they just recently did a series of articles now about the Cedro-Woolley School District, as well as legislation in Olympia that's affecting the residents of Skagit County. Just local citizens reporting on something that they think matters to them. So it's great when you can actually have these types of local reporting efforts going on. They can provide source documents, they can put up photos, they can provide evidence, at least to document what they're reporting on. And almost every time, these are stories that are being completely ignored by the local media. Now, at a bigger scale, just Washington statewide, there's been a recent launch of a group called the Center Square Washington. And I really like this, and I'm kind of excited about this. This isn't alone, and there's other groups that are starting to do this. But what I like about the Center Square Washington is that they've got a lot of reporters, and they're reporting on what's going on in Olympia and other local stories all around Washington State that are being reported in a much more politically neutral and accurate way than the biases that are typically reflected in local media. And this is important. How would you know what's going on in Spokane or Olympia or Tacoma if somebody's not reporting on it? And we need to have people reporting on what's happening in these communities. It has a big impact on us. It matters because if that isn't being reported on, it is likely that government's going to get worse. They're going to do worse things. They're going to waste more money. They're going to believe they can get away with more corruption because it's not being reported. And so we need groups and more local organizations like this to get out there and cover these stories, do their own research, do their own writing, not get involved in the groupthink approach to reporting on what's going on in the local communities. To some extent, this is why I did We the Governed after I left the Freedom Foundation. I liked doing reporting on stories that I knew for sure that the local media was going to conceal and try to hide from the public, or just ignore because it's not a convenient story for the narrative that they want everybody to have. And the ability to tell these stories really gets you some ability to just expose things that have been concealed probably for a long time, and they definitely would be concealed if you didn't report on it. And anybody can do it. The nice thing about online websites is you can provide source documents, you can provide videos, you can provide a lot of links to back up the information that you're presenting to people much better than you could have done on a traditional newspaper format or even television in just a few years ago. So I think websites in many ways can be much superior and a much better way of reporting this information. And whatever you put up here, then you can share it on social media. I would not rely on social media alone because social media can easily be taken away, your social media accounts, whether it's Nextdoor or Facebook or whatever. You can also get the benefit, like I was, of being called an illegal journalist. As the Department of Ecology called me when I reported on the toxic waste pile that they were allowing to grow in their front yard and chose to ignore for years, despite the fact that these guys are supposed to be the ones who care about the environment. And they called me an illegal journalist for going there and actually taking photos and documenting what was occurring in their front yard. That's kind of funny because, of course, there's no such thing as an illegal journalist, and I've always wondered, how would you define what an illegal journalist is? And it's kind of an amusing description, and it was, of course, intended to, marginalize me for daring to go out there and actually report on this. And basically, the feedback that I've had now in doing this for a number of years is that an illegal journalist is just somebody who's willing to speak truth to power and basically provide information that the elite establishment, political establishment, whatever it is, doesn't want you to report on. And that appears to be the definition. And so by that definition, you and I and anybody else who actually cares about the truth and what's going on in our communities, we're going to be considered an illegal journalist, and you should wear that badge with pride. I certainly do. And I think it's an important thing for all of us to recognize that as citizen journalists going out there and doing this ourselves, we can make a big impact, and we can do it. It is possible. This isn't beyond our ability. This is well within the skill set, especially if you team up with others who care about what's going on in your local community. Sometimes the first step is just going out and reporting, out and interviewing somebody. It doesn't have to be some kind of a gotcha moment. It can just be a report on what's going on in the school board, or visit with the county commissioner or the city manager or your PUD or whatever it is, whatever is interesting to you, to go and just talk about it and expose that story to the public. It'll probably be a story nobody else is going to tell. Once you start doing that, then other people will want to join with you. And I believe that that's how you grow these local websites and local efforts to report on local news. And there's all kinds of ways to do it, of course. All the modern technology, streaming, podcasting, videos like this, all kinds of different ways to communicate to the community and where you live about something that's going on. And I think that we want to not limit ourselves too much, but we also want to find teams of people who are willing to help us do this. It's much easier when there's other people out there to help you. And you'll be surprised. And particularly other people will be surprised on what you uncover, because nobody's watching, nobody's looking right now. There's not much of a local media presence, and whatever is there today is being quite manipulated and controlled into a pretty narrow narrative. So if you get out there and actually expose these stories, you will be shocked at what you find. And I think it's very important, because you can't wait for somebody else to come and do this for you. So step up, start doing the research. If you don't feel like you're the guy who can write it or the person who can get up and testify, maybe you're a good researcher. And maybe you're a good videographer. Maybe you're just good at helping them set up a website. Maybe you're just good at sharing that information out on social media. Whatever it is, find like-minded people who are interested in doing the same research and interested in the same subjects in your community. This helps you build a local team of people who care about creating local news and just reporting the truth to their neighbors and their friends. Somebody has to do it, and there's no reason why it can't be you. So that's what I really want to emphasize here. Again, if you want to see some of these other local channels, I didn't get a chance to talk about all of them, but I've got a couple local ones linked down below, and I encourage you to go there to get ideas. Maybe you can do it better, maybe you can do it differently, but it's helpful to look at some of these people that are already doing it. And I also encourage you to try to reach out to other people and find ways of doing this yourself. If you want to learn more, you can go to wethegovern.com. And again, as always, I try to remind people, please subscribe to this channel. Feel free to share it with others. Send me your ideas down in the comment section below on how you would do local reporting or what you think is being missed in your area. I do read those comments and try to respond to as many of them as I can. And remember, no matter what, the future belongs to those who show up.